Looking at the benefits of a Bitcoin standard, a main one, similar to gold, is that Bitcoin is a neutral reserve asset. Bitcoin is a decentralized network. It's not controlled by any one individual or party, which means it's an asset that countries may be willing to trust. Now, the key feature that could make a Bitcoin standard superior to a gold standard is fast and cheap settlement. If you want to send Bitcoin across the globe, you can do it in a matter of minutes, and you can do it for very cheap. And this final settlement is what we need to get away from these credit-based systems. If you can have final settlement, that means that credit doesn't need to expand. So I think that final settlement is very key when it comes to our next monetary system if we want to get away from these credit-based systems that have really been nightmares and haven't worked. Now, the thing that worries me is that Bitcoin does have a low bandwidth. Currently, Bitcoin can only handle around 300,000 to 500,000 transactions per day. And as the volume for these Bitcoin transactions goes up and this demand for the network goes up, the fees for transacting go up, and it also takes longer to transact. So I just think about, if Bitcoin is going to become this global monetary system where a lot of people are using the network, what are these fees going to look like? It could be very expensive to send Bitcoin, and also how long is it going to take in order to transact, right? Final settlement could be very expensive and quite slow, similar to gold. Looking at some of the other benefits of Bitcoin, a key one is that Bitcoin is verifiable, unlike gold. We can see when Bitcoin leaves one address and goes to another address. And this means that we can hold people accountable within the system, make sure that claims for Bitcoin don't outnumber the actual amount of Bitcoin out there. Bitcoin is also scarce, like gold. Bitcoin has a maximum supply of 21 million, which is key when it comes to money. We want to make sure that the money is scarce so that the money holds its value over time. And the last thing I'll say about Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is this decentralized system that the world can improve on. There's lots of people all over the world working on Bitcoin right now, trying to improve the main chain, trying to improve the payment layers above the main chain. So I'm really encouraged by all the great things that are happening around Bitcoin right now. And I believe that as a global society, with some of the smartest minds working on this project, the Bitcoin network, that we could figure this thing out and turn the Bitcoin network into a viable monetary system that we can all benefit from. When it comes to the problems with a Bitcoin standard, I think the main one that sticks out to me is scalability. Can the Bitcoin network scale to be this global monetary base money, and can we build a global monetary system on top of it? I briefly talked about how Bitcoin has low bandwidth. It can't handle that many transactions, and the more people want to use the network, the more expensive transacting becomes. It also means that the network slows down a bit. If everyone across the world is trying to use this network, I just think about this possibility where a lot of people simply can't afford to transact on the Bitcoin network, and the only people that can are these large and powerful entities that hold a lot of Bitcoin, and that's not a very good system, right? If the monetary system becomes disconnected from Bitcoin because only a couple of people can afford to use it, then I don't think that's a great system. And this makes me think that maybe in the future, Bitcoin may need to change. Maybe we need to make tweaks to the Bitcoin network to increase the bandwidth, to make sure that the main Bitcoin blockchain is more accessible. And that's something that we could do. It's just something that we need to be very careful about. The great part about Bitcoin is that it is very resistant to change, right? It has this fixed supply of 21 million, and it has these rules that all make sense for a monetary network. If we are going to make changes to the monetary network, we just need to be careful and make sure that we make the right ones, and that we don't move Bitcoin to a bad place. We can move Bitcoin to a great place where it can work for people and it can be this great monetary system, but we got to make sure that we don't fuck it up. Now, the reality is that if we do move towards a Bitcoin standard and Bitcoin becomes the base layer for a global monetary system, most of us are not going to be transacting on that main Bitcoin blockchain. It's going to be very expensive and it's going to be very crowded, so it's just not going to make sense. Where we're going to be transacting are these payment layers above Bitcoin. Currently, the most popular payment layer is the Lightning Lightning Network. If you're not familiar with the Lightning Network, it is this network that's been built on top of Bitcoin to handle smaller payments. So if you need to buy a coffee or something small, rather than doing a transaction on the main Bitcoin blockchain, which can take longer, can be more expensive, you can do it on the Lightning Network. And what happens is people kind of tab up all these smaller transactions, and then when they're ready, they can do a final settlement on the main Bitcoin blockchain. Now, I don't think that the Lightning Network can really scale to become this global layer 2 for Bitcoin. So we're gonna have to figure out some different things, and we have to make sure that the payment layers built on top of Bitcoin have a mechanism for connecting to Bitcoin and keeping the payment layers honest, right? If people are just using currencies that are pegged to Bitcoin and they're controlled by governments and nobody can really afford to use the Bitcoin blockchain except these large and powerful entities, then I think you could just get this monetary system that becomes disconnected from Bitcoin entirely and just turns into another credit-based system. So I think it's very important that we build out these payment layers on top of Bitcoin carefully and make sure that there's a mechanism connecting the payment layers to the main Bitcoin blockchain, and making sure that the people in this monetary network, the people of the world, feel like they hold something of value, and making sure that whichever medium we're using is not a medium that can be debased and not a medium where it can turn into another one of these credit-based nightmares.